Hello, piano teachers. This video is all about your topics and concepts for what you can include or what you should include in your piano lessons for beginners. Let me get my screen here with my PowerPoint, and we'll jump in to these lesson concepts. So in a typical 30 or maybe 45-minute lesson, these are all of concepts that you can include, from note reading, rhythm and steady pulse activities, technique, ear training, ensemble playing, and then composition or improvisation. So note reading includes, of course, your landmark notes such as treble G, bass C, middle C, and so forth, that you probably will start with when you introduce your music reading on the staff. But then also to connect it to directional reading. So line to space, and then how that moves from maybe then to line as skips, line, 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 or space, space, space being skips, and then out from there to other intervals. It's also connecting your note reading to the keyboard. So your keyboard topography, right? Moving up, moving down, how that matches what we play on the piano keys. That's always a good idea, especially for beginners, is to make sure they have a really strong understanding of the keyboard. You can always review finding their different note names, finding all of the octaves all over the piano, playing up, playing down. So you can always go back and review their keys on the piano and then connecting to the music staff. So lots to do with note reading, breaking down the music staff, identifying line notes, identifying space notes, and then directional reading, how they connect one to the next. And then also pattern recognition. Can they recognize maybe a measure if it's repeated in the piece? To recognize longer patterns, longer groups of notes together. That's really how we read music. We really don't read music too much by individual notes. It's really in a sequence and a pattern alongside other notes. So that's note reading, and then rhythm activities. So many things you can do with rhythm activities and just steady pulse. You can take a rhythm pattern from the book itself, from the piece itself, rather. You can handwrite rhythm patterns for students to clap or to tap or to use a little percussion instrument, just feeling a steady pulse in their body. You can have them move while you maybe play something or while you even listen to a piece. If you're just listening together, you can have them move, you can have them dance. Again, tap a little percussion instrument. But rhythm should be felt, rhythm should be internalized. You can also count it by 1, 2, 3, 4, or ta, 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 ti, ta. You can also use the little words like in Piano Safari, Charlie, Chipmunk, Zachariah, Zebra. You can also use that, and interchangeable is fine as well. But rhythm and steady pulse should be felt. It should be internalized. For technique, you always want to be sure the student is sitting at the appropriate distance from the piano. You can have them just put their arms straight out in front of them and it should touch the back of the piano. So the right height as well. You can have them sit up maybe a little higher if they're a small child. So their arm then is a flat, even arm all the way across from their elbow to their wrist and to their hand. So you don't want their wrist to be bent at either angle, too high or too low. And then for their fingertips to always be slightly curved, touching the keys, and for that first little finger joint to be a nice round and firm joint. I will link some articles. You can continue reading about technique. I'll link that in the chat here. Ear training. Ear training is a great activity to do right like at the beginning or the end of a lesson if you have like just 2 minutes left. You can do straightforward things like listen if these notes go up or down. Listen if these notes are repeated or if they're different. Listen if these notes are a step or a skip apart. Listen for major or minor. Listen if these notes are staccato or legato. You can do that long before you even introduce them to playing it. So ear training is a great quick activity. Like I said, beginning or end of a lesson, a couple of minutes. Also, the piano adventures, the theory books have some activities that you can do, some ear training, and that the student listens and they mark some things in their pages. So in their theory book, there are some of those as well that you can incorporate. Your ensemble playing, that's your duets that you should play with the student. It is so good for their ears to hear music that's more than what they are only playing as a soloist, only their part. Some students, it is a little challenging to hear all of those sounds all together, but they get used to it. Sometimes it's helpful for you to play your duet part first for the student to just hear that by itself, especially if it's really different, if it's fast or jazzy swing rhythms. So you could just play your duet part first for the student to hear and then add the parts together. But that ensemble playing super important for them to kind of feel how their part could fit into a bigger piece of music. Kind of expands their mind a little bit and their hearing. And then composition and improvisation. Your improvisation, those could be some of the same activities from the Piano Safari method. Even if you're not exclusively teaching from that, you could borrow some of those activities either from Piano Safari Friends or the Piano Safari Book one. We most recently did the rainstorm, thunderstorm on the prairie. I think that one. So that could be a fun activity you have the child do to create those sounds. The students love making sounds at the piano to connect to an animal. So that's a really fun activity, but getting them to just feel comfortable playing and exploring their sounds and that they are creating it. So that's also a really fun, quick activity to put in there. All right, so these are all concepts that your lessons should include, and you can always circle back around to all of these concepts as well so that they're covered throughout. And then, like I said, you go back and can review all of these concepts at different times and in different ways.